Hi guys. You know, uh, we wanted to get together and talk about some information that you should have learned last year. I'm not going to go back if I make mistakes. I'm going to make mistakes during this video because this is like one of my true first videos I've ever made for science class. So these are things that we should have talked about last year, and you did. We just wanted to review them with you. And so as we go through this PowerPoint, I want you to listen, and I'll tell you when to take down some notes for our upcoming unit on cells. So we have the cell theory. Again, last year we should have talked about the cell theory, right? Cell theory will be the first topic, but let's kind of review some other information first. We want to find density. Now, if I look at this diagram here, I have a box or a cube, or not a cube, a rectangle, and it measures 10 centimeters by 5 centimeters by 5 centimeters, and it has a mass of 500 grams. And remember, you should have learned that density is mass divided by volume, right? So density, how much matter takes up a certain amount of space. So if I'm looking at this and we come up with that formula, so if we have 10 um, as a length, the width is 5 centimeters, and then height is 5 centimeters, or however this uh, is placed, we can see it. So we have to calculate the volume first because we didn't know the volume. If you go back and you look at the diagram, I just have the dimensions. In order to get the volume of the space, we have to multiply the length, the width, and the height. So the volume equals 10 times 5 times 5. Now, how you put it in the calculator matters. You have to go 10 times 5 times 5. So it's 10 times 5 is 50, and 50 times 5 should be 250. So the volume of the rectangle or box is 250 centimeters cubed. Now the density was given. Remember, what was the density? The density was 500 grams. So we're going to plug it into that formula. Density equals mass divided by volume. So we look at that, and so it's mass. Oops, I gave you the answer so quickly. I told you this is the first time for me. Is 500 grams divided by 250 centimeters cubes. So you should come up with a density of 2 grams per centimeter cubed. Now, it's, when we talked about it, or if you talked about it last year in class, the density of water is 1 gram per centimeter cubed. Now, if this box is 2 grams per centimeter cubed and we happen to drop it in a bucket of water, would it sink or would it float? And the answer should be it would sink because of the fact that it's 2 grams per centimeters cubed, which again is more dense than water at 1 centimeters cubed. So the brick would sink, or the block would sink in there. So this is what we're going to review today. So we're going to understand that all organisms are composed of one or more cells, right? We're going to recognize that the presence of a nucleus determines whether a cell is prokaryotic or eukaryotic. We're not going to cover this today. Miss Young is going to cover this with us on Friday, tomorrow. And we're going to identify the basic characteristics of an organism, including prokaryotic and eukaryotic, and whether a cell is unicellular, multicellular, autotrophic, heterotrophic, how it reproduces, right? That makes a difference. And we're not going to worry about classifying the kingdoms at this point. We are just going to work with cells because our first unit, again, is going to be over cells. So let's just jump right in. And we're going to watch a short video really quickly. It's called The Wacky History of Cell Theory. So it's about a 5-minute video, and after we watch it, we'll continue on.
One of the great things about science is that when scientists make a discovery, it's not always in a prescribed manner, as in only in a laboratory under strict settings with white lab coats and all sorts of neat science gizmos that go beep. In reality, The events and people involved in some of the major scientific discoveries are as weird and varied as they get. My case in point, the weird history of the cell theory. There are 3 parts to the cell theory. 1. All organisms are composed of 1 or more cells. 2. The cell is the basic unit of structure and organization in organisms. And 3. All cells come from pre-existing cells. To be honest, this all sounds incredibly boring until you dig a little deeper into how the world of microscopic organisms and this theory came to be. It all started in the early 1600s in the Netherlands, where a spectacle maker named Zacharias Janssen is said to have come up with the first compound microscope, along with the first telescope. Both claims are often disputed, as apparently he wasn't the only bored guy with a ton of glass lenses to play with at the time. Despite this, the microscope soon became a hot item that every naturalist or scientist at the time wanted to play with, making it much like the iPad of its day. One such person was a fellow Dutchman by the name of Anton van Leeuwenhoek, who heard about these microscope doohickeys, and instead of going out and buying one, he decided to make his own. And it was a strange little contraption indeed, as it looked more like a tiny paddle the size of a sunglass lens. If he had stuck 2 together, it probably would have made a wicked set of sunglasses that you couldn't see much out of. Anywho, once Leeuwenhoek had his microscope ready, he went to town looking at anything and everything he could with them, including the gunk on his teeth. Yes, you heard right. He actually discovered bacteria by looking at dental scrapings, which, when you keep in mind that people didn't brush their teeth much, if at all, back then, he must have had a lovely bunch of bacteria to look at. When he wrote about his discovery, he didn't call them bacteria as we know them today, but he called them animalcules because they looked like little animals to him. While Leeuwenhoek was staring at his teeth gunk, he was also sending letters to a scientific colleague in England by the name of Robert Hooke. Hooke was a guy who really loved all aspects of science, so he dabbled in a little bit of everything, including physics, chemistry, and biology. Thus it is Hooke who we can thank for the term the cell, as he was looking at a piece of cork under his microscope, and the little chambers he saw reminded him of cells, or the rooms monks slept in their monasteries. Think college dorm rooms, but without the TVs, computers, and really annoying roommates. Hooke was something of an underappreciated scientist of his day, something he brought upon himself as he made the mistake of locking horns with one of the most famous scientists ever, Sir Isaac Newton. Remember when I said Hooke dabbled in many different fields? Well, after Newton published a groundbreaking book on how planets move due to gravity, Hooke made the claim that Newton had been inspired by Hooke's work in physics. Newton, to say the least, did not like that, which sparked a tense relationship between the two that lasted even after Hooke died, as quite a bit of Hooke's research, as well as his only portrait, was misplaced due to Newton. Much of it was rediscovered, thankfully, after Newton's time, but not his portrait, as sadly no one knows what Robert Hooke looked like. Fast forward to the 1800s, where 2 German scientists discovered something that today we might find rather obvious, but helped tie together what we now know as the cell theory. The first scientist was Matthias Schleiden, a botanist who liked to study plants under a microscope. From his years of studying different plant species, it finally dawned on him that every single plant he had looked at were all made of cells. At the same time, on the other end of Germany was Theodor Schwann, a scientist who not only studied slides of animal cells under the microscope and got a special type of nerve cell named after him, but also invented rebreathers for firefighters and had a kickin' pair of sideburns. After studying animal cells for a while, he too came to the conclusion that all animals were made of cells. Immediately, he reached out via snail mail, as Twitter had yet to be invented, to other scientists working in the same field, and it was Schleiden who got back to him, and the two started working on the beginnings of the cell theory. A bone of contention arose between them, as for the last part of the cell theory, that cells come from pre-existing cells, Schleiden didn't exactly subscribe to that thought, as he swore cells came from free cell formation, where they just kind of spontaneously crystallized into existence. That's when another scientist, named Rudolf Virchow, stepped in with research showing that cells did come from other cells. Research that was actually, how to put it, borrowed without permission from a Jewish scientist by the name of Robert Remak, which led to two more feuding scientists. Thus, from teeth gunk to torquing off Newton, crystallization to Schwann cells, the cell theory came to be an important part of biology today. Some things we know about science today may seem boring, but how we came to know them is incredibly fascinating. So, if something bores you, dig deeper. It's probably got a really weird story behind it somewhere.
Okay, so that brings us to the main three parts of cell theory, and that was just a unique way of looking at it. So, in your journal, so take out your science journal. Hopefully, you have one even at home as a distance learner. And we're going to go back and we're just going to rewrite some of the main topics. We're going to put tabs in the journals at school so that each unit that we have, we're going to tab it out. So you might do this at home as well. So this is the first thing, the three main ideas of cell theory. And if you remember from the video, the first of the cell theory is one or more cells make up all living organisms. Now, if you think of you or me or any plant that's out there, we're made up of millions of cells, right? Not just one, but millions, because your body is composed of those cells. But a single organism, a single cell, is an individual living organism itself. So it's just a cell and it operates similar to your body, like we're going to learn this year when we talk about the difference between the type of cells, between the eukaryotic and the prokaryotic cells, and how they function and operate. Number two is cells are the fundamental element of all living organisms. Without cells, you can't be a living organism. All things are made of cells. So all trees, all plants, all bugs, all people, all animals are made of cells. And then finally, number three, and if I'm going too fast, you can pause the video at any point. All cells are derived from pre-existing cells. As you notice, some of the scientists thought that they just spontaneously appeared. That I don't know how he justified that understanding, because in order for something to just spontaneously appear, I don't even know, that'd be kind of like a magic trick or an illusion. But no, all cells come from pre-existing cells, which we do not cover really in seventh grade science, but you will when you take biology in high school on, where they do divide and split to make additional cells, right? In any great detail, I mean. So those are the three main topics of cell theory. And I'm just going to tell you on the 8th grade STAR test, this does show up occasionally. So it's one or more cells make up all living organisms. Two, cell is the fundamental element of living organisms. And three, all cells are derived from pre-existing cells. Next topic that we're going to do in your journal, okay? So you're going to have the first one, which was cell theory. Now, just below that, we're going to talk about the 7 characteristics of life, how we know something is alive. And they have to have all these 7 characteristics. Now, if you go into different, just like I've told you in the past, if you go into different science texts and look at different research, some say there's only 6 characteristics of life. I like to stick with the 7 that I know. So I would put number 1 right underneath there. So 7 characteristics of life. Number 1 is grow and develop. All animals grow from birth, plants grow from seeds, and they require nutrients to grow. So any type of animal or plant grows from a single source and it develops. It matures into a tree, it matures into an adult person, it matures into an adult. In that picture, we have the kitten and the mother cat, and then you see the seed developing into the plant. That's number 1, grow and develop. Number 2, they have to be able to move. All living things move in some way. Now you're going to sit here and maybe think to myself, well, plants don't move. But as we learn these things called phototropism, and if you've ever seen you might have done this experiment in elementary school where you took a plant and you put it in a window and and it grows towards the light, and then you turn the plant to face away from the light, and you come back in a day or so, you'll notice that the plant has moved directions. It's grown cells on that side of the plant to push it towards the light. So again, characteristic number two is they move. All living things move in some way, right? Move. Number three, they have to use energy. Just like when you go down to the cafeteria and you get lunch today, or you go home and you eat dinner with your family, that food that you eat is actually providing the energy that your body needs to survive. It needs it to keep you warm. It needs it to create the energy for you to move. So all of these things. So oxygen as fuel sources for animals, sunlight, carbon dioxide for plants. Again, as we've gone through the in the past, and we'll go through this photosynthesis, right? Photosynthesis, the formula where you take sunlight, water, and carbon dioxide, and it makes uh, the plant grow. And it produces food, the energy, and oxygen. See, I tell you, my mind is not working. I'm sorry, guys. But again, so this is a formula for photosynthesis, right? H2O plus CO2, right, creates energy, which is in the form of glucose. And then the waste product, or in our case, for the plant, is oxygen that we breathe in. So again, number three is use energy. Number four is reproduce. Animals and plants make copies of themselves, right? We do. In order for our species to survive, or an organism to survive, it has to reproduce some way. If we look at the plant here, the plant starts as a seed, grows into a small tree, becomes a large tree. The tree fruits, which is its way of reproducing. It drops the apples onto the ground with enough food to survive, right? Mostly because, it could be spread around that way too. And then it creates a new seed. Now that seed starts the cycle again. The same thing with a human, a human reproduces just like cats and dogs reproduce, because eventually we live our life cycle, and if we didn't reproduce, our species would end. The next is react to changes in the environment. So that response to some kind of stimulus. So it's external, by moving or growing in the direction of shivering or losing leaves, changing shape, etc. If you think about your body and you think about goosebumps, that's your way, that's the way of your body keeping warm. So that goosebumps keep you warm, right? Just the same thing as, so as so you shiver, it shakes the cells inside of your body to create heat and warmth. Then to the right, you see here with the plant, it says response of a plant to the direction of the light. So the plant grows towards the light, and as it grows towards the light, it's actually moving. And again, if I took that plant and I switched it, if I turned it away from the light and the light source was keeping in the same direction, then the plant would switch and grow back towards the light. It's consistent. Next is exchange gases. All living things breathe. You yourself, just like we're wearing facial masks right now. I'm not wearing mine because I'm home in my own house, but we breathe in the oxygen, right? Our body uses it to produce energy for us. And then we breathe out the carbon dioxide, or the waste product. And then the waste product that we produce is absorbed by the plant. The plant takes that carbon dioxide and it releases the oxygen. So again, it's a cyclical pattern that happens in nature. So every living organism exchanges gases. Now, this is the one that this is a contention where you go from 6 to 7, but I'm going to put the seventh one. Everything has to get rid of waste, right? Excretion of food, not absorbed, exhaling, sweating, plants give off oxygen. This is a characteristic of life, is the ability to get rid of waste. As you see on the bottom left of your screen, the mouse is excretion, it's pooping or it's urinating. It's getting rid of the excess material in its body. Similar to the plant is excreting. What is it excreting? It is excreting oxygen, right? Because it's a byproduct of respiration. But that's great because as a byproduct or as an excretion, it's something that we need to survive. So we're breathing it in. So those are the 7 characteristics of life. Hopefully you got them down. If you didn't, go back and you can rewrite them again, and we'll move on. Okay, I just wanted to go identifying versus living and non-living. This is the last thing that we're going to do today. So if I look at to the left here on the picture of rocks, and then to the right I have birds flying. And if I obviously look, are rocks made up of cells? If I'm using my cell theory, no. So therefore they can't be living. The plant or the birds to the right made of cells? Yes, they are. So non-living, living. Okay, identify as living or non-living. This is a starfish. What do you think? Starfish. Is a starfish made of cells? Yes, it is. So that would be a living organism. The earth. It's a biosphere. Is it a living, breathing thing? Does the earth, again, certain aspects of the earth do? So we could say that it is a living organism because the earth would die if it didn't go through the cycles of the plants breathing in the carbon dioxide that's being produced in the atmosphere and pushing out oxygen for us to breathe, right? It's the same thing with the weather pattern. The heat from the sun warms the planet, and that uneven heating of the Earth's surface creates weather patterns, right? Just like the hurricane that's happening this week that's about to hit Texas. Identify as living or non-living. Okay, this is the sand of a desert. Are sand crystals made of cells? No, they're not. So it's non-living. Clams. Again, I'm talking about the organism that lives inside the shell. Are they living or non-living? I would say living. Monkey. Again, is it made of cells? Yes, it's living. Lizard, flower, mushroom. So we can decide for which one of these, is living and non-living. Okay, this is a little more complex. This is actually a picture of a cell close up. So this is a living organism. This is bark of a tree. Bark of a tree. Do you think trees are made of cells? Yes, they are. So that's a living organism. And then we have lightning. Lightning is electrical. It's coming from the atmosphere. Some people says it's living. Is it made of cells? No, it's not made of cells. It's electrical current, so it's non-living. A cricket. Cricket is made of cells, so it's living. That concludes the end of our presentation today. So again, the 2 things that you should have had put into your journal today would have been cell theory and the 7 characteristics of life. Thank you, and you'll be looking to a much better video tomorrow from Mrs. Young. Bye.